Evening, traveler. Pull your chair in a little closer to the iron stove and let the late-night wind settle down outside. My name is Sheriff Silas, and after spending all these years wearing a silver star on the frontier, I have learned one unchanging truth. Most folks reckon that danger always rides in with a loud gunshot or a roaring pair of six-shooters. But the most troublesome riddles usually start with a quiet mystery in the dark, where people think nobody is watching. Take what happened over at the Silver Creek General Store just last month, a puzzle that nearly turned our whole town upside down over a missing stack of bank deposit slips. Old Man Abernathy, our town's veteran shopkeeper who had kept the town supplied through every harsh winter for 20 years, came walking into my office right before midnight. He looked shaken right down to his boots, setting his brass ledger lock on my desk and staring down at the floorboards. He told me, Silas, someone didn't just steal the weekly cash earnings from the safe. They specifically took the physical ledger book and the entire bundle of deposit slips meant for the Territorial Bank. Now, when a pillar of the community is accused of such a calculated theft, people are mighty quick to grab their pitchforks and shout for instant justice. The townspeople were already pointing their fingers at young Thomas, the new night shift stock clerk who had only arrived from the east a few months prior. They said an educated city boy with fancy ideas and expensive tastes was bound to go crooked sooner or later. But in my line of work, you never hang a man's future on tavern talk and village prejudice. I told old Abernathy I would walk over to the general store myself and take a close look at the heavy iron safe, because truth is a quiet thing that leaves its own footprints if you know how to look for them. When I stepped into the general store, the air smelled of ground coffee, cured leather, and dry goods. The heavy oak counter sat beneath a smudged window, holding the brass cash register, a stack of invoices, and the reinforced storage safe. Abernathy unlocked the door to the inner chamber, showing me the open steel box where the weekly cash receipts had rested safely just 24 hours before. It was short by nearly $400, a devastating blow to the small business owners relying on the store's credit. Abernathy swore up and down that only he and young Thomas knew the secret combination to the inner lock and that the office door was always bolted from the inside every single evening. Naturally, the townsfolk pointed to Thomas because the boy had been seen walking near the stagecoach depot late last night holding a thick canvas mail pouch. But when I tracked young Thomas down at his boarding house, he wasn't packing saddlebags to run away from the law. He was sitting quietly at a small wooden table, sketching landscape drawings by the light of a single tallow candle. When I asked him about the heavy bag he was carrying, he smiled calmly, opened a small wooden chest on his dresser, and pulled out a set of heavy iron drafting tools and surveyor chains. He hadn't been carrying stolen money pouches at all. He had been picking up his professional equipment from the freight depot after working late on town expansion plans for the mayor. Thomas didn't steal the cash, and he hadn't fled town. That meant the missing ledger and the emptied safe weren't the work of the young apprentice at all. Someone else in that store understood the inventory records inside and out, and someone else knew how to manipulate the safe mechanism without raising an alarm. Instead of rounding up suspects or jumping to hasty conclusions, I decided to examine the physical evidence left behind on the heavy wooden shelves and the floorboards around the desk. I sat down at the shopkeeper's desk while the oil lamp flickered against the dark timber walls, running my fingers along the dust patterns beneath the smelting tables. That was when I noticed something curious about the dust patterns and the arrangement of the invoice files scattered near the back corner. While young Thomas had a neat, tidy workspace with all his inventory logs neatly arranged by date, the ledger area near the safe had been recently disturbed by a boot dragging a large, square object across the floor. More importantly, I checked the ledger of store supplies kept on the top shelf of the supply cabinet. When I turned back the pages to cross-reference the inventory, I found that several pounds of high-grade graphite powder had been marked off for lubricating door hinges, but no hinges in the store actually squeaked. Someone hadn't just robbed the safe on a whim. They had spent weeks studying the vault's internal tumblers using graphite powder to leave impressions, carefully timing their work so the heavy weight of the ledger book and deposit slips would never trigger suspicion during routine inventory checks. And the only other person in that town who possessed the master key to the back supply room and the specific knowledge of the store's bookkeeping was Abernathy's own distant nephew, a fellow named Jebediah who had been denied a partnership in the enterprise 6 months prior. When I confronted Jebediah down at the livery stable the following morning with the graphite dust residue and the inventory records in hand, the man didn't even try to reach for his holster. He simply let out a weary sigh, dropped his head, and admitted that mounting debts down at the rail junction had driven him to a very foolish crime. We recovered the stolen ledger book and deposit slips tucked safely inside an old grain sack in Jebediah's tack room, and the cash was returned to its rightful owner before the midday sun reached its peak. Old Abernathy and young Thomas cleared the air right there beside the general store counter, their professional bond growing stronger for having weathered the storm together. You see, partner, people often think that solving mysteries requires a fast gun and a loud voice, but more often than not, it is just about checking the floorboards, matching your records, and refusing to let hasty rumors cloud your judgment. The fire in the stove is burning low, and the stars are shining bright and clear over the frontier ridge. Until our next case file is opened, keep your ledger clean, your heart steady, and your dealings honest. Good night, partner.